This is something we've been talking forever. But now they've discovered it with $1 billion research. And I've seen hundreds and thousands of people who just become healthy and well. If something appears on my plate, if I just feel this, I know what to eat and what not to eat.
You eat something today and see, just learn to observe how agile and how active your body feels after eating this food.
The simple thing right now that's a rage in the world is, if you come to our ashram, all the people there who are physically immensely active eat 10 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the evening, 2 meals. How many doctors have been telling me that they will die of malnourishment, this will happen, that will happen, you must do this, you must do that. I eat only 1 meal a day most of the days. One big meal I eat and that's it. And doctors telling me, no, Sadhguru, the way you're traveling, this will happen, that will happen, you must eat at least once in 4 hours, something you must eat. I said, leave me alone, I'm doing fine. But now, a big university in America comes up with this called intermittent fasting. It's not nonsense, it's good. But they rediscovered something that we have known forever. Now everybody is saying there must be a 16-hour gap. Then all your ailments will go away. What the hell were we saying all these thousands of years? The simple thing is, there are many aspects to this, psychological, physiological. But now cancer is on the rise in the world. A cancerous cell is like a criminal in the society. All of us have in our bodies. Only if they become… their concentration becomes more than what they should be, or they gang up and locate themselves in one place, they become like organized crime. There are pickpockets in Kochi, I'm sure. Hello? There are small-time criminals, individually operating in twos and threes. We don't take it very seriously, we leave it because it happens. But suppose all 100 of them got organized into a organized crime, now we will crack down. Because we know now it becomes a threat to the society. Similarly, cancerous cells are like this. Criminals, they're moving around, doing some damage. Their only problem is, right now, they're generally eating about 8 to 12 times more than what the other cells are eating. So if you just give sufficient break between one meal and the other, most of them will die because they cannot survive. This is something we've been talking forever. But now they've discovered it with $1 billion research. And I've seen hundreds and thousands of people who just become healthy and well simply because they're not fueling up all the time when the tank is filling. In the yoga center, all the time people are physically active. So everybody is very hungry by the time it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the evening, they're extremely hungry. But we learn to live with that because empty stomach and hunger are two different things. Hunger means your energy levels start dropping. But empty stomach is a good thing. In the yogic sciences, today modern science also is coming in line with this. But what we know by our experience, you will spend $1 billion to come there. Because research is all about how many $1 million, that's how it is. Your body and your brain works at its best only when your stomach is empty. So we always make sure we eat in such a way, how much ever we eat, our stomach must be always empty within 2 to 2.5 hours' time maximum. So we go to bed hungry always. People think they cannot sleep. They can sleep. On an average, for 25 years on an average, I slept only 2.5 to 3 hours. These days I'm getting little lazy and sleeping anywhere between 3.5 to 4.5 hours in spite of the level of travel that I have. When I say level of travel, if I say my level of travel in the next few days, you will fall off your chair. Yes? Should I tell you? No, not necessarily. Because in the next 10 days, I'm in 5 different countries doing I don't know how many events, all kinds of events. So, you're able to keep this up simply because you don't overeat. It's very, very important. Everybody eats 2 meals. I generally eat only 1 meal, 4:35 in the evening, because I don't like to sit in front of the plate and worry about how much to eat. I like to eat well. So, 4:35 in the evening, if I eat a meal, it's only next day. Is this enough? Am I looking okay? Hello? Because any correction and purification that needs to happen in the body, your stomach needs to be empty. It's very, very important. Otherwise, the purification on the cellular level will not happen. You pile up things and then you have all kinds of problems.
When you don't touch the food, you do not know what it is. If food is not good enough to be touched, I don't know how it's good enough to be eaten.
So we should not have listened to our mothers and we should eat with our fingers because touching our food helps us stay in contact with it.
The cleanliness of your hands is entirely in your hands. The cleanliness of the fork is not entirely in your hands.
This is true.
And nobody else but you have used these hands. So, there is an assurance as to how clean or not clean it is right now. The fork, you do not know who's used it, how they've used it, for what they used it. And all they have to do is wipe it with a tissue and give it to you and it looks pretty clean. Above all, you don't feel the food. The first thing that's been taught to us is, if food appears in front of you, to hold your hands upon the food for a few moments, just to feel how the food is. If something appears on my plate, if I just feel this, I know what to eat and what not to eat, what should not eat. I don't taste it and then reject it, I just don't eat. Because my hands are the first level, not tasting in the sense the tongue tastes, but knowing the food. First thing is knowing the food. You want to know a person, you guys go and shake their hands. I'm usually avoiding that, but
That's a good strategy.
But the food that's going to become a part of you, first thing is your hands. Even if you physically don't touch it, just being conscious and being there, it clearly tells you how the food will behave within you. Whether this particular food on this particular day, should it go into you or not, because every day your body is not the same thing. Every day, every moment it's different. If you feel the food, you just know whether this food has to go into you on this day or not. If that much awareness is brought in, we don't have to go on telling people what they should eat. Every meal they must decide what they should eat in that meal. There is no one prescription that this is what you should eat for your life. That will feel too claustrophobic, that only this I can eat.
Your selection of food and consumption of food also must happen consciously. More than what you eat, how you eat it is also equally important. When I say how you eat it, these are all live substances. Every one of them had a life of their own, whether it's a plant, animal, vegetable, every one of them had a life of their own. Now in some way, you're making food out of it, you must consume it with utmost gratitude. If you approach it with a certain sense of gratitude and reverence towards the food that you eat, when I say reverence, it may feel like too much for you, but I'm asking you, let's say we put you in a room and you had nothing to eat for 5 days. If God appears in front of you, what will you ask for? Food? So that's how important it is. You must understand the food on your plate is not just a substance, it is not a material, it is not a commodity, it is life. It is the life-making material for you. So you must treat it as such. Right now, when it's on the plate, when it's out there, it has no value, but the moment you consume it and it becomes your flesh and blood, now suddenly it's of immense value. Why do we live like this? It's very important when it comes on your plate itself, you must treat it as a part of yourself. With great reverence, you must consume. Just the way you consume it, if you change that, food will behave very differently within you. This is what consciousness means. If people say your consciousness has no impact on your life, only chemical structures have impact, I'm very sorry for them because that's not how life works. Human consciousness has a deep and profound impact on everything that we touch, especially the food that we are making another life as a part of ourselves. When we're doing such an act, it's very, very important we treat it with utmost gratitude and reverence. I want to tell you, there is no such thing as good habit and bad habit. Habit means you are functioning unconsciously. If you're functioning unconsciously, that's a bad thing because the whole thing about being human is we are capable of doing things consciously. That is the beauty of being human, that we can do everything consciously. What an animal does unconsciously, we can do the same thing consciously. We can eat unconsciously or we can eat consciously. We can breathe unconsciously or we can breathe consciously. Everything that we can do it consciously. The moment we do something consciously, suddenly that human being looks very refined and wonderful. Just because somebody walks and speaks consciously, doesn't he become a beautiful human being? Yes or no? That's all. So why is it that we are trying to develop habits as if there's a good thing? Habit means fixed realities, where you don't have to think. You get up in the morning and it'll happen to you. No, don't try to automize your life. That is not efficiency, that is the efficiency of the machine. This one is supposed to function intelligently and consciously. Nobody is expecting it to function like a machine. So, about food and stuff, food must be suitable for the body that we eat for. It is for the body. This is a building material for this body, the food that you're eating. What is the appropriate food? Unfortunately, is all messed up right now. Traditionally, we ate very sensibly in this country, but these 1,000 years of innovations have brought other kinds of food cultures, and today the national diet is pizza or pasta. What is it? Which is one? I don't know. Both were competing. So, we are losing our sense about food. It's definitely time to look at what is the most suitable thing. If I go into that food, it's a very long process, but you must experiment with food, not just by the tongue, but by the body. You eat something today and see, just learn to observe how agile and how active your body feels after eating this food. If it feels like it wants to go to the grave, that's not good food. If it feels like it wants to be alive after eating this, except coffee, because that's a stimulant. If you eat food and your body feels very agile and alive, that means it's good food, body is liking it. If you eat something, it feels dull, that means it's not liking it, it's having difficulty with it, that's why it feels dull. So just on this basis, there's a much… this is a very simplistic way of putting it.
So here we are on the the Great Big Indian Wellness Show, and we talk about eating for health and well-being, which is incredible. And I'd like to introduce to you Avanti Pete, who joins us right now, who is from the Isha Hatha, who's from the Isha Foundation, and Avanti is a Isha Hatha yoga teacher, in fact. So Avanti, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tony. Pleasure to be with you here today and on this platform as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't know why it is, and perhaps you can help me out a little bit here, plus the many people who are watching and consuming this great forum today. every time I watch Satguruji, he leaves me profoundly speechless. And today he talked about food consumption and eating for well-being. And I have to admit, once again, I'm profoundly speechless.
I think we're all left in a similar state, to be honest, because he makes the most complex things appeal so simply and in such a simple way to even kind of, use it in our day-to-day lives.
Indeed. Tell us a little bit about the Isha Foundation briefly.
So the Isha Foundation, we are a volunteer-run organization which was founded by Sadhguru about 40 years ago now. And the core of our offering is the science of yoga, which creates an opportunity for each one of us to have a tool for self-transformation. Now, the Isha Foundation has 2 centers, one in India and one in the US. But we also have 300 local centers across the globe, and we've been operating in the UK since 2006.
Excellent. So, as we consume and watched that excellent piece there from Satguruji, how can one actually implement some of those habits that we've been learning about? And the great big Indian wellness show has been talking about it for the last 2 days, and Satguru has only just compounded and also endorsed it even more. So, how can we implement some of these habits quickly?
So the simplest way, what Sadhguru has mentioned, is to experiment with your body. So don't make a rule of this is right, this is wrong. You eat some food. When you eat it, if you feel like you want to sleep or you're lethargic, the body is saying, I'm not happy. But if you eat something and you feel light and energetic, then that's working for you. So learning to listen to the body with what makes it happy and unhappy. So when we say listen to the body, we're not saying listen to the tongue, because there's a big difference between what the mind says, and it's been tricking us all through our lives. We've experienced that individually. So it's not about what the mind says, but about what the body is actually saying. So once we have this understanding of what works for the body and what doesn't, it becomes very, very easy to learn to listen and eat appropriately. Another simple, example that I could just suggest here is that say you eat a lot of live vegetarian food in your diet, like salads, fruits, nuts, or sprouts. You start with 25% raw food or live food in your diet, stay there for 4 to 5 days, and gradually increase it in another 5 days to 100% raw. You see how your body feels, see how your energy levels are. You stay there for a day or two, and then you again come back to cooked and raw with a mix of, say, 50-50. This is a good proportion for most people based on the activities we do. So it's very important to experiment, see where you fit in best with the work you do. At the same time, you're feeling very energetic.
Very well explained. Thank you for that, Avanti. Now, when it comes to consumption of food, and you mentioned eating vegetables and starting eating them cooked and then slowly moving on to raw vegetables, is this kind of diet for everyone? And is it particularly restrictive for people? And what about people with illnesses? Does it work for everyone?
So that's the thing. When we said experiment, there'll be no ground rule that you have to have it this way. If somebody has a certain health condition, they will eat according to what their body can digest or what is needed for their body. So maybe for a person who has a certain condition and raw food doesn't work, then that is the right food for that body. But for an average healthy body, or where you don't have anything that requires special attention, this experiment can be easily done. But otherwise, the moment we learn to listen to us, whether there's a certain level of dis-ease or not, it's very easy to follow the body.
Avanti, Sadhguru was saying something about eating twice a day, and he himself eats once a day. And traditionally, we've been told to have 3 proper meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which completely throws out the notion that Sadhguru told us about. And then, if we start implementing the changes that you're talking about eating habits, how long do you think it'll take before we actually see a change in our lifestyles and well-being?
So, to be honest, when Sadhguru spoke about how often we eat, what he says is generally if you're below 30 years of age, 3 meals work well. But once you cross 30, it's best to cut it down to 2 meals, like the brunch and dinner. So that's intermittent fasting. And over 60, he recommends 1 meal. But you can choose this 2 meal, 1 meal based on your lifestyle. It's not a hard and fast again. In terms of how to implement it, So a few things is that you can't suddenly change from a 3 or 4 meal to a 2 meal diet. So one important aspect that can help is yoga, because it helps bring so much energy to the system that you realize that your food consumption changes. The body doesn't need to be refueled that frequently when you energize yourself with practices. So that's a huge way to supplement the system, which automatically changes lifestyle. And it also it rejuvenates your system. At the same time, it brings a certain sensitivity where the possibility for the body to overeat almost becomes nil, because the body becomes that aware. You don't overeat, you just eat what is needed. So automatically it will systemize itself into these 2 meals or 3 meals based on what your body works for.
And becomes a lifestyle change. I understand that. So, in the closing part of our discussion here today, Avanti, and I wish I could talk to you for longer, you've conducted over 500 programs and across India, the UK, and Europe as well, worldwide. What can people take away from this today, and what advice do you have for them, and some really important tips that you could really kindly advise us of as we close our discussion?
Sure. So Tony, I would first say is give an opportunity to learn to listen to ourselves, because no rule, no fixed things can work for everyone, because it cannot be a blanket rule where all of us know, each of us, with the same food that we have eaten for dinner, each of us would respond to it differently. So the first thing is listen to our body. At the same time, to bring in things like yoga or a conscious amount of eating, that is eating locally, eating what's fresh, what is seasonal, you'll notice the agility and energy that the body has is completely different as against if we eat something very processed. So that can also make a huge difference in how we feel. So I would say simple tips is incorporate a simple yoga practice if you can, and see what is growing around you locally and pay attention to the body. I think that combination will all fall in place in time.
Avanti Pate from the Isha Foundation, thank you very much indeed for sharing your kind thoughts with us today. And I do hope that we will have the opportunity to have a conversation to further extend what we've been talking about here today together. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Roy. An absolute privilege. Thanks.